Poverty, I think, in the strictest sense, means not having access to basic needs, right? So food, water, healthcare, shelter. But I think, in a practical sense, it also means having barriers to being able to thrive. So can you rebound from a sudden emergency? Can you live somewhere that doesn't put your health at risk? I think it's really important to think about poverty in the broader context of inequality, the systems that have historically disadvantaged communities of color, for example, and how those systems are perpetuated today. So environment is linked to everything, right? Health, economic security, housing, education. I've been a journalist for more than 15 years, and I've covered everything from major natural disasters to congressional policy to the White House and more beyond that. But my focus has always been on accountability journalism, and I've tried to center underserved communities in all of my reporting. Everyone is susceptible to natural disasters, but people's ability to prepare and survive and whether or not they're able to rebound is so dependent on whether or not we have the resources. So in Puerto Rico, when Hurricane Maria hit, people were already going through a serious financial crisis. This was 2017. The poverty rate in Puerto Rico at that point was something like 44%. Nationally, it was at, I think, roughly 13%. So that gives you a sense of how dire it was to begin with. And this is partly because of a long history of colonial rule and of federal government policymaking that treated them as subjects rather than equal citizens. During the crisis, federal aid was really slow and inadequate. We saw the president underplaying the severity of the disaster. So I think that's a very clear example of them having the deck heavily stacked against them to begin with, and for them to be able to recover. And despite that, some did, but many Puerto Ricans also felt they had to leave the island because there wasn't a viable option to continue being in their home. It also began a very long and painful process of people trying to rebuild their lives. So, I think one key thing is that tracking what toll climate change in terms of natural disasters, in terms of other housing inequities and other issues that are kind of compounding because of climate change, is a great starting point. Because without understanding what's actually happening and the kind of disparate impact that it's having on different communities, you can't really make effective policy. Taking policy lessons also from how government investment or lack of investment has changed outcomes in the past would be another really smart way to look at it. The Federal Emergency Management Agency is basically non-functional, and as much as that support has been insufficient at times, it's a life-saving agency. If we want to talk about urgent policy change, that's something that is going to become very real very quickly as we enter storm season. I think people could work together differently by trying to fill gaps in their neighborhoods and their communities when a crisis does hit. Learning and advocating for their neighbors. I think local media can play such a critical role in getting people to just learn about each other and talk about issues that are affecting their direct lives, and through that start advocating for each other and themselves as well. But at the same time, it's not on them to fix the big system, like the big systemic issues. And in a moment like this, I'm looking for more stories that do tell stories of people banding together, people figuring out ways around the system, because that's what you have to do when there's kind of a block in terms of policy making.